Oh,
Okay,
there we
maybe it
go.
worked.
There it goes. I got the little splash page. 6, 7.
Yep, we are live, Carrie. Hi, I'm Susan McConnell, your LinkedIn for the Reserved champion. Thanks for joining me. I host a conversation every Tuesday at 12 o'clock with different business owners on different topics to light up my network with actionable ways to improve your business so you can be fabulous today. Today, my guest is Ceri Ruenheck. She is the CEO of It's Your Call. I've known Ceri for a very long time. I think I met her at the first networking event I actually ever went to. Ceri is the president of It's Your Call. It's a business-to-business telemarketing firm that was established in 1994, so she knows her stuff. She's also the author of Cold Calling for the Clueless. It's on Amazon, so if anybody needs help with cold calling, order the book. It's Your Call helps small businesses make necessary outbound calls that they might not have the resources to perform themselves, including cold calling, lead qualification, customer outreach, I can't even talk today,
That's
and
okay.
database cleansing. Welcome, Ceri.
Thank you, Susan. It's nice to
Apparently
meet
I
you.
can read, right?
Yes, you did
Ooh,
that very well.
but
I
can
wouldn't
I
hire you
read
as a caller.
a script? Oh, hang on, I gotta look at, we have some comments here. So, Denise. Hi, Denise. So Carrie has been doing cold calling for many, many years. But tell me, what are the different types of cold calling campaigns that are out there? Like there's cold calling that salespeople do, like me, and then
Right.
there's other types. So tell me about the different types.
So, what a typical cold calling campaign would entail would be a customer either having a list or purchasing a list, a brand new list. Never people on the list don't know them from Adam, and we start calling them, and we develop qualifying questions. And when we find somebody that's somewhat interested, we qualify them and make it so that the customer knows that these are people that they actually want to speak with, as opposed to those, why don't you just send me some literature?
Correct.
So,
So you
the
take it
flow.
down to actual qualification based
Yep.
on the parameters that you get when you speak to the client of what they're looking to gain from.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We usually, on a cold calling campaign, we usually we prioritize maybe 4 questions at the most, and if we get 2 answered, we're doing really well, because it's a cold call. It's like initial shaking, and no one's going to tell me what their budget is on the first
Oh,
call.
really? Why? They do to me all the time. No, I'm kidding.
That's because you got your foot in the door. I'm on the phone. There's a big
That's
difference.
true. I'm a walk-in kind of girl. No, I do cold calling. I mean, back in the day, cold calling was one of the only ways. It was like I used to sit myself in a phone booth and make like 40 calls till I actually got like 3 people on the phone, and then I could actually leave.
You're really
So, but
dating
it's so
yourself
different
right
now.
now.
So let's talk about like the differences, because back in the day, people actually sometimes answered their phone. So sometimes they don't answer, correct?
That is correct. So it used to be when I would be figuring out how many attempts you had to make for each um, pass through a list. You used to figure about each time through you'd get through to 30%, and so if you went through the list 3 times, you would pretty much get some kind of finality on the whole list. Now it's about 15% of the time you get through to people. So it's still, I mean, people are still answering their phones. It's just a little bit more legwork.
Okay,
Okay,
so
but they
question,
do
yeah, oh,
answer.
definitely. It's definitely more legwork because it's now, instead of one of 3 touches, it's one of like 8 or 10 touches that you do for a process.
6.
Yeah,
Well, about 6.
yeah.
You
I
know,
could
then,
pull up more, but I find different ways to touch people. I call it a touch, right?
well, yeah, I mean that's one of the things, that you've got your phone call, and if you actually speak to somebody, but then and then with that phone call, you're always gathering the email address. So there's another touch. If you reach out to them and you leave a voicemail message, that's another touch. Your name's getting brought up again, and
Right.
I've seen it where we're doing cold call, or we're doing calling for It's Your Call, and we leave the website in the voicemail message. So, or you can check us out at our website at, itsyourcall.com.
Okay.
And I will see a spike in the analytics in the visits to the website that will be coming from direct versus, ads or referrals or whatever. So I think it's effective,
Definitely, definitely. So what is your advice for, obviously you don't get as many people on the phone. So let's talk about voicemail strategy. Do you have voicemail strategies now with the different clients that you bring on? Because sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. I have different things I do depending upon who it is I'm calling for. So,
Right. Well, that's usually, I mean, I've had customers where they're like, I don't care, just hit them with a voicemail every single attempt. You always leave a voicemail message. I've had customers who are like, I don't want to leave a voicemail. And I do recommend, like, as I said, from what said earlier, you got to leave a voicemail message because then they're never going to know your company name or anything like that if you don't throw it out there. So, usually if you're doing like 5 attempts through a list, it's usually like either the first and the third or the third and the fifth times you leave a voicemail message. That's just kind of a comfortable thing. So you're not really, not that I'm calling that customer who wanted it every time aggressive, but
right.
you don't want to inundate you don't want to sound like a robocall.
Right.
Ones that you
That's what I
get
was
all
trying to
the
get
time.
at. Exactly. And then are you calling? So it's like a list. So it's not like you're calling that person like twice in one day. You're probably calling them once in one day. And then 2 or 3 days later, you're trying them back. So it's not like you're like,
Correct.
sometimes I'll call a group and then I'll recall and I won't leave a message the first time, but I will leave one the second time. Is that?
Exactly. Yep. That's exactly what I mean. We're going through hundreds of names a day. So it's not like every 10 names you're going back and circling around. It's
Yes,
spread out.
definitely.
Yeah.
I agree. So what is your strategy for when you get somebody on the phone? Is it different for each client, or do you have sort of a cadence that you sort of pull off every time you do make a phone call?
Well, it really depends on what the client is hiring us to do. I mean, if we're doing, follow up on invitations to events, that's a completely different call than an introductory call versus a following up on an email blast or reaching out to reestablish connection through a customer database or something like that. But
Ah,
um, but we always, I mean, the idea goal is to always try and get an appointment if we can, even if it's, the customer's like, no, we just want to send out information and then we'll do follow up and blah, 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 blah. But if we have somebody really excited,
yeah,
we're not going to say, wait, we need to send some literature first and then we'll set the appointment. We're going
yeah.
to hit
No,
them up.
it's not the point.
Oh,
It's not
yeah.
the appointment. I go for the appointment. Yes, I
Yeah.
agree.
We
Oh,
always go for
so
the appointment.
uh-huh. So actually I heard a couple things. One is you will call for events, meaning if someone has an event coming up that they're either going to be at or that they're having, you will do phone calling to invite people. That's one way of using
Yeah.
cold calling. And then someone does an email blast. And so you've done some campaigns where you've called after an email blast as well. Interesting.
Yep. And
Okay.
those actually are pretty successful because they're truly not a real cold call, because these people now are theoretically, if they open the emails, recognizing the company's name. Yeah, that was a little dig there. But then they recognize company's name, and then it can be. I mean, there are times where I'll think, oh yeah, I want to follow up on this, and then 3 days later, it's at the bottom of my inbox, and I've forgotten about it, and you get a follow up call, and so, oh yeah, that's right.
I wanted to do that. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Talk to me about automate. So I'm doing some phone calling for a client that's calling to like a very large companies where they obviously have a lot of the automated systems now.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as getting lists and phone numbers for that, how do you handle that? Only because sometimes you have some name and a phone number and it might not be their exact extension? Have you?
Yeah. So you can circle out, get to the main menu and talk to the, please wait for a live operator or whatever they say now. Or you can press some automation systems, you can press 0 or 00 and it will go through. And then the last resort, and this is, I guess, a little bit on the shady side.
We didn't hear that.
You ask for a salesperson because A, they're always going to put you through, and B, every salesperson is a schmoozer, and they're always going to, not always, but they will. A lot of times you'll get a name from a salesperson.
I actually did used to do that because, like I said, with all this automated thing, sometimes the operator doesn't even answer anymore. It just keeps going round and round and round and round. And
Right.
like I said, it's a big pharmaceutical company. So I found a direct line to a PR person. So I'm going to call them and ask them how I get in touch with that person, because
Yeah.
I'm never like pulling lists of phone numbers, I think is pretty hard now. Is that correct? I mean, we can go into lists and things. How does that work? Are
Well,
you able to pull?
lists vary. I mean, you have compiled lists, which are lists that just take other lists and compile them. You can get association lists. You can get, so if you're a member of an association, we had a company recently, they were they joined the rehab and long-term care facilities. So we were calling, we were calling on the members of that list saying they had joined the group and they were members of the list, and then they were more apt to put us through to the correct person if they were not the correct person. But you can look at buying a list for like $300 for 1,000 names, and that might be, and I'm estimating on the cost $300, but for 1,000 names from a compiled list, and if you're like me, or where your target audience are 10 to 150 employees, and have been in business for 5+ years, that's going to be fine for me, because most likely the names on the list are going to be the business owners, and they're going to be the person that I want to speak with. And then you can go to Hoover's, or where if you're looking at you want the director of IT in the environmental servicing department of all the chemical companies.
Right.
I would go for something like that. And forgive me, I'm not a very good LinkedIn person, so I'm sure that LinkedIn has some options too, but that's why you're around.
So. Yes, they do. Plenty of options. Well, you know what? Yeah. You can download off of LinkedIn, but they don't, I believe, give you phone number. And then I have to say, most of the time, they don't even give you email addresses, but there are other ways to do it nowadays. So you can sort of scrape some of that stuff off. Yeah.
So if you wanted to do direct mail, then you could that would be the option. Huh.
Well, like I said, there are other services that will pull out an email and a phone number.
That
are not like, if you download that list from LinkedIn, sometimes I based on what I know from how many emails I see, they don't send them all. They don't download them all to your list. So I'm not sure why, but
list appending is always kind of iffy. Like I think some of the companies that I say, they're only going to get about 40% of them. And then I think 15% can still bounce. So if you're looking for email, I mean, appending, it sounds great and fabulous and everything, and it's expensive. It's an expensive thing.
Oh, it definitely is expensive. So what are any techniques that you use for getting past a gatekeeper? I mean, I know that's like a little bit past.
You don't really want to get past the gatekeeper is your friend. If you're looking at a high level, getting into your C-suites and stuff like that, the gatekeeper knows a lot. They know a lot of information. And they also know that if you're a smarmy person on the telephone trying to, oh yeah, this is a personal call, I need to speak to Bob. It's like, all right, well, I'll just take your name and phone number down, and then they chuck it in the garbage can or whatever. But, one of my favorite stories is we were calling for an IT company, and they were calling CTOs, and we called up Revlon in New York City, and gatekeeper answered the phone, and we did the pitch to her, and she asked us to FedEx the information over to to them. So they got it like, I think that was like a Thursday. So by Monday or Tuesday, the company actually then Revlon followed up with that, and they had an appointment by like Thursday next week, and that was all through the gatekeeper.
And that's timing. That's one of those things. Phone calling can be timing. It's like we had an IT, like maybe our system went down, and all of a sudden you call and it's like perfect timing. And so,
well, yeah, with IT services is usually is a, oh my God, I hate my system, and then perfect timing.
yeah. So what are some of the types of campaigns, like companies that, do well with doing phone calling recently for you?
Well, let's see. We're doing calling for IT company. We're doing calling for an event, following up on event invitations, healthcare stuff. We recently did one for drone manufacturer, or well, they have manufacturing. We were doing it for their drone services. So they're calling up municipalities, et cetera, to see if they wanted to use their drones as opposed to getting their own, or they also did drone training. We've done stuff recently for rehab facility furniture stuff. So
very cool. So any different types of companies can definitely use phone calling.
Pretty much, if you're selling to a business, we can do it. I mean, we did calling to a chiropractor, calling up hair salons, because it was a very local area, but because stylists are on their feet all the time, they have terrible back pain, and so
that is actually a great one.
yeah. I mean, but you just kind of think out of the box and how you can make it more broader what you offer. And we did calling for a cappuccino machine company.
Cool.
Company had a cappuccino machine. We were calling up companies to see if when they have their board meetings, have they ever thought of using cappuccino? And so
that's very cool.
Yeah.
All right. So I had another question. It just escaped my brain. I'm not sure why, but the different types of companies that you call for, when you typically start a project with someone, what is, let's start. Like, what are some of the things you ask them before you actually start a campaign? Like, you sit down and have as far as because from beginning to starting.
Yeah. So, first of all, they have to make sure that they have a good list, because really a campaign is only as good as the list. And then we discuss what the message is of what the person is going to be offering. And then what I do is then create a script or a call guide, so that we know how the flow of the conversation is going to go, and some of the phraseology that's maybe unique to the industry. And then what we'll do is, after we get it, it's a back and forth when we develop the call guide, so that the customer has input into it, and and I can look it over, and I mean, just make sure that it's flowing, and it's not a book. I mean,
right.
If you get a marketing person writing a call guide versus a salesperson, it's completely different.
Right.
And so anyway, and then we run their campaigns, and after our first 5 hours of running it, by then we should have been able to go through the script enough times, the call guide enough times, so that if there's anything weird, we've had things where, we thought a campaign was going to go one way, and all of a sudden it just completely changed. And so we get back with the report to the customer, so that it tell how the campaign's running, if the list is good, how many attempts we've made, and what the results of all those attempts are.
That's great. So you provide all the details once you start the calling as well.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's cool. All right. So the last thing I'm going to ask you is, when you first dial someone and they pick up the phone, as far as rapport building, do you go right into it? How do you introduce yourself? Like, I hear different ways of doing things.
There are a lot of
expert advice on it.
There are different ways on it. There's a lot of people who purport to being, oh, do you have a minute? And usually that gets you to saying the yes right away or the no right away. But I just jump into it. If the person is the decision maker, they're going to be like, okay, they're going to listen to the first couple of seconds of what you're saying, and then it's either they're interested or they're not. And if they're interested, they're going to say, oh, I'm busy. Can you give me a call back? Or I'm in the middle of a meeting. Can you give me a call back? And if they're not in, I have no need for sewage disposal robots or something like that. So,
but do you,
thank you.
Sure, I gotta go. Do you actually say your name and the name of the company first? Like some people will just ask for the person and just go into it and not even introduce themselves.
Oh no, you legally have to say what.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, you have to start off legally by saying who you are, who your company is, and what's the reason for the call. That has to happen. I mean, I've never had a telemarketing police person cite me on that, and we follow it, but no, you just have to. And it's, I get those calls all the time. Hi, Ceri, you want to save some money? And I always say no, just to mess them up.
I like to spend money.
Yeah, I know, right? Isn't that what it's for?
Right.
But
awesome.
I actually will come back. Well, who are you? Like, why am I going to tell you anything? Why am I going to answer any questions? I think it's also a courtesy.
I think so too. I just, like I said, I've had you hear, all different things. Like they kind of can go right into telling you about what it is that they do without even identifying themselves. And I don't think I like that very often.
No, I don't like it either.
I like the fact, you identify yourself because they have an idea of why you're even calling, and they're either going to listen or not going to listen, and you're going to get your results either way. So I say, introduce yourself. That's kind of, what I was thinking about that. Do you have anything else that we didn't cover? I'm trying to think of my calling questions, but I think I did them all.
I think you hit them all.
I did.
The other thing is that, that a successful campaign is always to do the follow-up. Even if somebody's blowing you off and they're saying, oh, just send literature, and if you've gotten a couple questions answered, then they're probably not blowing you off. And if you say you're going to send out some information, then make sure you send out the information. Because that has definitely been the fall through on campaigns is not doing the follow-up.
Fortune is in the follow-up. Yeah, I do quite a few campaign. Well, I do actually do some calling for a financial planner, just very part-time. And it's, I always do a follow-up email. I'll tell them that I'm sending them an email if I'm leaving a message. Because they can set up an appointment, and I put the appointment link in there. So in case for some reason they're busy and they do want to set up an appointment, they don't have to wait for me to call back.
Yeah.
We've
gotten it. So for some campaigns, because people will say, oh, I only want appointments. I don't want to talk to anybody. Well, they will allow us to log into their server so that we can send out the information, then make a follow-up and tell the customer or the prospect, we're going to make a follow-up call, and then follow up with them, and then see if we're ready to set an appointment then. But,
That's great. Awesome stuff. Well, thank you. Hopefully the audience here has gotten some very good advice on phone calling, when and why to do it. And it's great information. And I'm going to put Ceri's information in the chat if I can figure out how to do that before we end. And make sure you guys join me, I should say, every Tuesday at 12 for Dangerous Conversations to help you move forward. But next week, my guest is Sean Crabtree. He is the author of Dental Profits. And for anybody that has to retain customers, even though it's dental profits, it's definitely a great tool. So thank you very much, Ceri.
You're quite welcome.
Thank you to everybody that's here. And in case you missed it, we will repost it later on in the week. And we're going to sign off here for this Tuesday. You can hang on, Ceri, because when it ends, we stay on.
Okay.
Just in case I forgot to tell you that. Bye, everybody. It's spinning.